of each of two groups of members are present, I declare the motion negatived. Committee stage. The Council continues its committee stage debate on the first group of amendments, and that is to introduce provisions in respect of contract override and relevant amendments. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 weeks ago, Mr. So invited me and copyright owners to sit down to discuss the amendment in respect of contract override. Mr. So with regard to the legal reasons and background for contract override, was not very clear with regard to contract principles and also conflicts of laws. To put it bluntly, he's not up to the mark to discuss such issues. Now I want to raise this because of the following. Mr. To has adopted the attitude by laughing at Mr. Charles Mok and said Charles Mok changed course. Mr. So, I can only tell you that I and my colleagues, in respect of this amendment, will do our best to make full use of the time to put forward our justifications. With a person who is so incapable and ignorant, we can only explain to you the contract principles, the basic legal concepts, why it is necessary to move this CSA. If you don't know our position or the position of the netizens, you have not done your part. This afternoon, I may have a chance to meet with the U.S. Consulate General or the American Chamber of Commerce. Well, if you are not doing any lobbying, well, I will do it in the capacity of a LegCo member. I hope that they will accept contract override and or fair use. Since U.S., UK can do this, why can't Hong Kong? Now, if contract override and user-generated content can be accepted, it will be a way out. Since you have not done what you should do, I am a LegCo member, I have to do that. By the same token, you make more than $300,000 per month. What are you doing? Now, Mr. President, going back to the issue of contract override, in the previous debate, I said that the Bureau said that contract override was a common principle and under common law. If it is not put down in the copyright ordinance, there is such a protection, and therefore there is no need to accept my amendment. But this argument is incorrect. If you require the people of Hong Kong to sign these user conditions, user terms, if they breach that, then at the level of private litigation, there is still civil liability. Therefore, I move the amendment on contract override to avoid citizens breaching user terms and subject to civil litigation. And that's the importance of moving the amendment. Now, in a debate of the UK Parliament, many MPs raised this issue. I don't want to belabor the point here. As for the legal principles and rights, people are not very familiar with this. Mr. So is a good example. If he is not clear about them, so do people generally know without contract override provisions, will they still be protected? They can resort to fair dealing exceptions. Not everybody is clear about it. I move this amendment because I want to put it beyond doubt. Nobody will be worried. They don't need to worry that they are in gray territory. Everybody will enjoy the exemption or exception, even if someone wants to contract out this exception through a private contract, that cannot be allowed. So there will be no gray area, and no citizen will have their rights deprived, and they will not be worried about enjoying the exception offered by the copyright laws. The majority of copyright owners are people who have power and money. They know their legal rights because they have their own lawyers. But the ordinary citizens do not know their legal rights. After they have received a lawyer's letter, they are afraid. They just give up their rights. That's quite common. They don't want to get into civil litigations because that will upset their lives. The Law Society has pointed out that the amendments will only lead to disputes and uncertainty. Mr. So, quiet please. Quiet please. Order please. Mr. So, that is not a point of order. If you think that the member's statement is not accurate, you may reply later. Please observe the rule of order, rules of procedure. Quiet, please. Mr. Dennis Kwok, please continue. Quiet, please. Please keep calm. Let me address his point. Mr. So has shown that he is not up to the mark. If you want to know why raising this will have the accepting this amendment will not cause any uncertainty. Last time at the meeting, you showed that you didn't understand. So this time, the Pan-Democrats will explain to you at great length. Thank you very much. I was interrupted by him, Mr. Chairman. Generally speaking, ordinary people don't want to go to the court. They don't want to receive lawyers' letters. I move the amendment simply because the man in the street do not know their rights. They don't know what they can do or what they cannot do under the fair dealing exceptions. I hope that they have a good understanding of this. When they use Facebook or Twitter, they will not be bound by some user conditions. The UK copyright law provides very clearly that private contracts cannot be used to contract away from the exceptions provided by the law. Now, at the Bills Committee, I've already said that since the administration wants to make reference to the UK to amend the copyright law in Hong Kong, then the administration should copy it in total. Apart from introducing fair dealings, fair exceptions, they should follow the UK's approach of introducing contract override so that all private contracts, though conditions may be present in the contract for contracting out of the exceptions, such contract terms will not be valid. Some ask whether I have done anything, why a fair dealing is not included in the contract override amendment. It's not that I have missed something. Our approach is that we'll follow the UK copyright law. The UK copyright law's approach is not that for every fair dealing exception, it is related to a certain contract override arrangement. Now they put don't allow contract override in respect of important fair dealing exceptions. Say, for example, parody. The other is research, personal research, and education purpose. The contract override provision will be attached to it because these are important acts. Now, if your freedom of expression is restricted because of some private contract, then you really need to add this contract override provision. Because of education research, because of some private contract terms, you are not able to achieve the education purpose, then we introduce the contract override term. So we do take care of the interests of the copyright holders, both from the and also from the point of view of the users. I am not saying that all fair dealing exceptions should be attached with contract override provisions. Only important exceptions will have the contract override provisions attached. I hope Mr. Sin and Mr. Chan understand my point. As said by the administration, the copyright law is very outdated. Even if there is an amendment, with this amendment bill, it is an improvement with the time. I don't believe people say that keeping up with the times is a bad thing. We believe that the bill should be improved, but improving the bill doesn't mean that one should increase the protection of copyright owners, whereas the right of creation and right of expression is not further protected. This bill is imbalanced in this sense. When you increase the protection of the copyright owners, you should also enhance the protection for the rights of creation and also freedoms of expression. That's my reason for introducing the contract override provision. With regard to UGC and fair use, there will be certain amendments, but we are not going to discuss this now. With regard to the future development of Hong Kong, according to this perspective, if we are to be a creative industry hub, our law should keep pace with the international trend. And my CSA in respect of the contract override provision is in line with legal principles and is also in line with the spirit of the bill, and I see no reason the administration can oppose it. If you oppose contract override provision, you're just arguing unreasonably. With regard to contract override, the UK has done a lot of research. It's not that they hastily passed contract override provision and has not done enough research, and therefore many copyright owners have been harmed. If you look at the history of contract override provision, the Prime Minister in 2010, it should be Mr. Cameron. In November, he appointed Professor Ian Hargreaves to conduct a comprehensive review.
And in relation to the copyright law in Hong Kong, he hoped that the professor could conduct a comprehensive review to see the 21st century Britain, what kind of copyright law was needed. In the study, there was quite a substantial part on contract override. I don't think, Secretary, you have read that through, so I will spend some time to quote the part on the contract override. Well, this is what
we've had to compile the review. We have sought never to lose sight of David Cameron's exam question for us. Could it be true that the laws designed more than 3 centuries ago, these are copyright laws, 3 centuries ago, with the express purpose of creating economic incentives for innovation by protecting creators' rights, are today obstructing innovation and economic growth? The short answer is yes. We have found that the UK's intellectual property framework, especially with regard to copyright, is falling behind what is needed. Copyright, once the exclusive concern of authors and their publishers, is today preventing medical researchers studying data and text in the pursuit of new treatments. Copying has become basic to numerous industrial processes as well as to the burgeoning service economy based upon the internet. The UK cannot afford to let a legal framework designed around artists impede vigorous participation in these emerging business sectors. 咁跟住咧，佢就講啦，呢個
And he went on to say that the contract override was important, and point 5 said this.
Copyright. Government should firmly resist over-regulation of activities which do not prejudice the central objective of copyright, namely the provision of incentives to creators. Government should deliver copyright exceptions at national level to realize all the opportunities within the EU framework, including format shifting, parity, non-commercial research, and library archiving. The UK should also promote at EU level an exception to support text and data analysis. The UK should give a lead at EU level to develop a further copyright exception designed to build into the EU framework adaptability to new technologies that would be designed to allow users enabled by technologies of works in ways which do not directly trade on the underlying creative and expressive purpose of the work. The government should also legislate to ensure that these and other copyright exceptions are protected from override by private contract. 多謝主席。
現在距離1點鐘呢係不。
It's less than 15 minutes from 1 p.m. We will resume to the council. The meeting will be adjourned till 11 a.m. the 3rd of February, Wednesday.